Hello WordPress people. Have you ever had difficulties debugging grids when you're working on the front end of a website? So you're building a custom theme, or you're amending a theme, or adding a plugin or something, and you want your grids to line up nicely, so your columns all line up nicely in your design, but it can be really hard to see whether things are actually aligned properly because you've got lots of white space between elements, and columns aren't kind of adjacent to each other vertically and things like that. So I come across this kind of thing all the time, and a little while ago I hacked together a little solution, and the solution is just to overlay a grid on top of the website that is you can click through, but so you can see exactly where things line up on your grid. I've improved this a little bit recently because I was working with Gutenberg and noticed that my columns weren't lining up properly. So I wanted this system on a Gutenberg site that I was building. I realized that the columns don't line up, so that's another thing we'll look at later on in the video. But I wanted to use my grid overlay kind of system, and I wanted to make it a little bit more portable and a little bit better than my first kind of hacky version. So I've done it. And let me switch over to another screen for you. So here we've got a local copy of 2021 and the new default WordPress theme that is going to be launched in December. And I've just added, what I've done is I've just added some columns. I've filled those columns with cover blocks just so we can get a kind of nice overview of what a column structure would look like. So this is a default 3-column block followed by a 70-30 block, which is interesting because it's not actually 70% and 30%, it's 66.66 and 33.33. Then a 50-50 block, then a 25-50-25 block. Now, coming back to my point a minute ago, you can see that these columns don't line up really nicely. So if you have the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and then 2/3, 1/3, you'd expect those gutters to line up perfectly, and they don't. And that's very easy to see here because the columns are right next to each other, and we're not using text, we're using a cover block. So it's really easy to see that that alignment is off. It is not always easy to see that. And if I scroll down the page a little bit, for example, in this footer area where we've got these widgets, are those widgets lining up nicely with the columns above? It's really hard to tell because there's this massive bit of white space, and the columns above here are the 25, 50, 25, whereas you'd probably want the thirds to test. So it's difficult, basically, to debug columns and alignments. Now, I've made that a little bit easier. You can actually see the button. I wonder if I can move. Can I move myself out of the way? It's not really a good place for me to put my face. I might just get rid of myself in a minute. If I bring this in a touch, let me just bring that in a little touch so that you can see what I want you to see. Cool. So I have created this as a little plugin. It's still kind of a work in progress, but I've enabled the plugin. And what I've got now is this button in the bottom left corner that just sits on it. It's got a fixed position, so it just sits there. It inherits the default button styling, so it doesn't have any of its own styles. It'll be styled like your theme buttons are styled. And if I click that, voila, we get this lovely grid overlay that I can actually click through using a CSS property, which I'll show you in a minute. And this helps us to see that for example, our columns in the thirds here are lining up absolutely perfectly. But as expected, the 2/3, 1/3 columns are not lining up nicely. The 50-50s are, the 25-50-25s are not. So if you're trying to be strict with a 12-column grid system, you can see that Gutenberg is not doing a brilliant job. But it's good to see this. And if you were building custom blocks and custom modules, this would help you debug those issues, so you could quickly see if something's off. Scrolling down further, you can see here that the widget area does not line up. So I said that was going to be really hard to see whether that was lining up properly. We can very, very quickly see with our grid overlay on that those are not lining up properly. So that is something to look at. Now, this is working really nicely for 2021, but what about your own theme? So what I've done is I've added some CSS custom properties so that you can customize this grid. You might not even want to use it with a default theme. You might not even want to use a 12-column grid. So let's have a quick look. So in the CSS here, if I just go -- overlay, you can see my custom properties that I've added, and I can just change these in the inspector. So if you're working with a 9-column grid or an 8-column grid, just changing that one custom property changes the grid overlay for you. Same with the color. You know, we can customize that. Maybe red is part of your theme color, and that just like fades in way too much. Oh, that's interesting. I had this problem before. Yeah, let me refresh that. This color picker thing's a bit annoying, but it does. If you change that, it does work. Let me try it one more time. If it doesn't work this time, I might give it a miss. Just because it'll start to confuse things. So let's go orange. There we go. Let's give that a bit of opacity. And then I just escaped out there, so it didn't save my change. But you can see that just changing the custom property lets you change the color. We can change the gutter width. So what I've done here is in my theme, I actually have a gutter custom property, but I've defaulted to 32 pixels. So if the gutter I don't think is set, so I think this should be taking the 32 pixel. It is. So if I change that fallback value, you can see that the gutter changes. So if you have a tiny like 10 pixel gutter, it updates for you beautifully. Let's just set that back up to 32, which I think is the default in Gutenberg. I've got a little complicated-ish calculation here for the overlay column width. Now you could override that if you wanted to, but what this is doing is it's taking the overlay gutter property and the overlay column number property and calculating the width of the columns. And then the last variable here, or custom property here, is the overlay grid width. Now the 2021 theme, the way it's built is pretty cool. It uses a lot of custom properties, and there is one that is specifically for the width of wide aligned blocks. So responsive -- align wide - width. I've done a fallback to 100%. Just could probably take that fallback out because it's almost useless. But you could set this to, maybe you set your max width in ems, for example. So if I can change, in fact I can just change that whole thing to say it's 120 em. That is too big for the current viewport, so let's wind that back in a bit. There, you can see it's starting to come in now. So there. You can set your own width, and what you could do is actually set your own width at different breakpoints. Like I say, the 2021 theme is being very, very clever here with, I'll just refresh that again. It's been very clever that I can use that custom property specifically for this, and at any viewpoint, let me just demo this for you. I'll turn the grid back on. At any viewpoint, this is just going to snap beautifully because that custom property is being updated kind of in real time. So the width of the grid is always correct. So congrats 2021 theme team, because that is awesome. Okay, so that's it. Let me show you just quickly some of the code to show you how I'm doing this. So like I said, I've built a kind of little basic plugin at the minute called HD Grid Overlay. What I'm doing here, this is the main kind of output. So I'm checking for the existence of the WP get environment type function. I'm setting an environment variable based on the get environment type function. I'm checking to see if that has been set to local or development. And then if one of those is true, then I output a little bit of script, like it's a little JavaScript function, and that's just the click function. and then I output the grid overlay div itself. I output the button with the on click. You can see here toggle visual grid, so it fires this function. And that's it, and I output that in using WP footer, so that I can show you what that looks like. So if I let me just close that down. Here it is. So it basically outputs this script, you can see there, and this little bit of code, and that's it. That's all that's doing, and it only does this on local or development environments. You could add. Does it have staging? I can't remember what all the environment types are, but you could change that. And then the CSS for this is like this. So here are our custom properties that I've already shown you, and then I just set the grid overlay to display none, make it take up the whole height of the screen, fix position it, give it its max width based on this. In fact, I should probably call this max width, not width. Yeah, fix position it, make it sit over everything, so massive Z index. Pointer events none, which means we can click through it. So if there's a link underneath it, we can click that link. It doesn't affect anything like that. Basically, you can't click it. I don't think you can even right click it and inspect it. The stripe background is created using this amazing CSS function, repeating linear gradient. And it just sets up the gradient that way. This is just the CSS to hide it, or just to show it whenever the button is clicked, and the isVisible class it has been added. And this is the styling for the button itself. So again, just fixed position, nice high Z index, stick it in the bottom left corner, give it, and then there's no like button styling there because I've just let it take the default theme button styling. So you could style it a different way if you wanted to. So that's how it works. I'm hoping to turn this into a bit of a plugin, like I said. Let me know if you're interested in the plugin, and I'll see if I can put that together. It's a bit tricky because obviously every theme's different in terms of max widths, breakpoints, column widths, gutters, things like that. So I just have to figure out the best way to handle all that. But if this is useful to people, then I would definitely look at doing that and turning this into a plugin. So one kind of last thing to look at. Let's go back to this. So this really annoys me. I think that whenever you add 3 columns followed by like 2/3, 1/3, they should line up. I think that just looks unprofessional and ugly. But this is a tricky one to fix, and it's actually kind of a tricky one to explain what's going on. But when you add a column in Gutenberg, I'll show you what happens. So if it's just equal columns, for example, so 3 or 4 or 2, nothing fancy happens. It's just a flex. It's like a flex system, and it just like divide this up into equal measures, basically. However, if you select 2/3, 1/3, or as it's currently for some reason called 70/30, or like 50/50. Let me just demo exactly what I'm talking about here. So if I add a new block, there's the columns right there. Let me just use that. Right. So these are block variations. It says select a variation. This is using the block variation API, which is very cool. If I want to select 70/30, which very confusingly 2 columns, 2/3, 1/3 split. Since when was 70/30 2/3, 1/3? Who knows? But let's select that, and tell you what I'll do. This is what I did before. I'm just gonna copy that cover block and paste it in there. I'll copy this cover block. Sorry, I'll copy it again into here. Right, and then I'm going to do this as, so if I select columns and columns, and I go wide. Okay, now if I select, so I'm on columns, if I select this particular column, you'll see here that the percentage width is actually set to 66.66. So why it says 70, I've got no idea. 66.66, and this one will be 33.33 if I go back out of the cover block and into the column. Okay. So what is happening on the front end here is it's saying, I think this should be exactly twice the size of this or something. It's basically not taking into consideration the gutters. So in a proper grid system, you have to take in the gutters into consideration when you're working out the width of a multi-column div. Okay, and it's not doing that, and it's partly not doing that because this flex basis. So you can see that the 66.6% that you see, or 33.33% that you see here, is getting output in an inline style of 66. You can see the flex basis is set right here. So this kind of means that it's very difficult to do what we want to do, which is include the gutter calculation in the width of this. Now I've got a hacky fix for you, and I need to share my code with you properly, but I'll in the meantime, let me just turn off that kind of view. Let me bring this out a little bit, and let me hit the customizer, and I'll show you how I fix this. And it is a little bit hacky, I will admit, but I've just added it into the additional CSS right now. I might actually, it's going to be hard to read. Yeah, it is going to be hard to read. Let me see if I can find, I don't have it here. I don't have that original CSS open, but I'll quickly show you. I actually need this to be bigger. If I close that, yeah, we need the columns to be working. So let me uncomment all this CSS, and you should notice, as soon as I did that, let's stick that back in. You should notice, watch this 1/3 and 2/3 shift slightly. Right. Let me just remove that just to tidy that up. So I'll turn the grid on for you. And our 1/3, 2/3, that one isn't, I know why this one isn't working. I'll come back to that. And our 25, 50, 25s are working. This one isn't working, I think, because if I go back in, is this the last one? Let me find the one that isn't working. And if I go column, yeah, for some reason, it was missing the 0.66 on the end. It was just 0.6. And I'll show you why that matters in just a second. I must be fiddling about with this. 33.33. Let me update that and see if it works, and I'll show you why. I'll show you why that broke things. Let's wait for that to update. Is that updated? I think it has. Reload. It probably isn't going to save my customized changes because I didn't publish those. Yeah, let's just remove that comment again. Let's turn the grid on. Let's see if that works now. Yeah, look at that. Perfect columns in Gutenberg. Now, there is a caveat. Let me show you what I've done first. So, I've set a gutter variable here to 32 pixels. Now that is because that is the default Gutenberg pixel gutter dimension. And what I've done is I've selected, so I've taken a column, so WP block column, which is, that's a bad one to do an example of. I'll do this one. And if I go up column, there it is. And so this is, you can see this has the flex basis of 33.33. Let's find that one. So that's 25, 50, 75. So that is this bit of CSS here. Apologies for the formatting. I just copy and pasted this in before. So here we've got our 33.33% Gutenberg column, and we saw where that 33.33% came from. Now the flex basis has been set in an inline block, but I'm saying if a WP block column has a style of this, then override the flex basis. So what I'm doing here And flex space is complicated, and I can't go into it because I don't fully understand it, so I wouldn't be able to explain it well. But what I worked out that I had to do was to set the flex basis as the number of gutters that this spans. So you can see that a 33% spans 1, 2, 3 gutters. So I said the flex basis should be the gutter width times 3. And this is the same for this side. The flex basis for this div over here will be the gutter width times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's 1 less than the number of columns you're trying to span. And I've said, flex grow 1. Background red, I should get rid of that. So in behind this is a horrible red background, which I can get rid of. Let's just ditch that. And I set that to flex grow 1 because when I'm using a 33.33, it's only ever in conjunction with a 66.66, which will be flex basis 2, or flex grow 2, which I'll show you up here. 66 is the one here. So there's 66.66. Flex basis is set to gutter times 7, which I said, and flex grow is set to 2. So what this is doing is it's taking the gutter widths into consideration and then dividing the rest of the available space by 3 and assigning 1 of those to the left-hand column and 2 of those to the right-hand column. So it's exactly how we want columns to behave, but what I've had to do is I've had to undo what Gutenberg wants to do in order to achieve this result. So it's not ideal, because what's going to happen if I say, just start playing with this, is I'm not going to have a rule for flex basis equals 21.1%. So this only works for the default column variations that it gives you. So it'll work for the thirds because there's no flex spaces added to a third. There's no flex spaces added to a 50-50, but there are flex spaces added to 2/3, 1/3. Basically, anytime the columns, that's interesting. Something's broken there. Anytime the columns are different widths, this is where this comes in. Interesting that's broken. So that's what I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you 2 things. One, how to debug, how I built a kind of grid debugger, like you can see here. And 2, how I have attempted to fix the Gutenberg column issue. Looks like that needs a little bit more attention at maybe that's just at certain breakpoints. Yeah, something weird was happening with that breakpoint, so I need to look at that. But there you go, that is my video for today. If you like it, please let me know. Just click the little thumbs up, that'll be great. If you've got a question, please ask a comment, put it in the comments, and I will respond to any questions. And if you like this kind of video, we're putting out quite a lot of these, myself and Mark. There's some front-end ones, there's some back-end ones. We also do a monthly show called WP Cafe on this channel. So if any of that sounds interesting, it's just all WordPress development kind of stuff. If any of that sounds interesting, please do subscribe. That'd be great. Thanks a lot. See you next time. Bye.